Kosala that will present cross-platform and man release engineering. If you have any questions during the talk, you can ask them at our Slack line, Ask Speaker Thor, or at the end of the session.
Yeah, hi guys, good morning. My name is Kosala. I'm from a small country just underneath India, right? So we are sort of like 3.5 hours to 4.5 hours plus from Norway. So what I'm gonna show you is how we sort of like manage ship apps when it comes to offshore teams. So in order to understand why we do it like this way, you need to understand the business model that we are in. So 99X technology is into offshore industry, outsourcing industry. We have a very niche market in Norway and Scandinavian region. So I'm working directly with a company called Compelo. So that's my client here in Norway. So a little bit about Compelo is that they are into web mostly. So they have like around 3 products operating in I think around 7,000 plus customers using it. Customers in the sense not the people who are using. People who are using is like more than that. So customers for them in the sense is that it could be some company who bought the software. So users are basically their employees. So for why this topic is a little bit hard for an offshore company is that we don't get to tap into not even their customers and not even their end users. So we don't usually see them, right? So how do we sort of like push the apps we engineer for Compelo ends up in the end users is sort of like a challenging task for us. Not to mention the European Union laws are also sort of like not favoring us. So we sort of like sometimes cannot access the production environments and stuff like that from Colombo. So, and so 99X also quite new to mobile. So we are actually coming from a web background. Compelo is also coming from web background. So initially, like 2-3 years ago, Compelo decided that okay, we want to tap into mobile app market. So they came up with this mobile enablement initiative inside the company. So we were part of that initiative. Consequently, we ended up building 2 mobile apps. One, those 2 mobile apps operated in 2 different models. One operated as a startup, the other one operated as a supplementary app for their existing product. Right. So release engineering when it comes to mobile apps is like done and dusted. Like there's nothing new to learn on that area. So we have been doing this for quite some time, but mobile was really new for us. None of us had any of experience building mobile apps, so this was the first time we are trying it out. So whatever that we have learned so far, we had to sort of like throw it out. We had to learn everything from the scratch, right? Usually what happens in the offshore industry or outsourcing destination cost centers for European companies is that you engage with outsourced destination company and then you form a team there. So you build your product initially and then you keep on adding resources to build the rest of the supplementary apps and any other apps. So this is sort of like the natural way of engineering outsourced industry, right? So it happened for us as well, unfortunately. So we have been building web apps for Compelo for quite some time. and then they wanted to recruit few mobile engineers. So I'm working as a technical coach for Compelo and an architect for 99X Technology. So my role was to identify what is the best technology stack that is relevant for this particular initiative. So we had time frames also involved. We had lack of resources in terms of technology skills and things like that on mobile. So we had to sort of like recruit few mobile engineers, right? So usually what happens is that, so the team has been building web applications. So we know in and out about the product, what code, what business recipes, when you add a new component or new feature, how you should start it and how you should engineer it along the all the tiers. So we have like small teams working on, so this is somewhat closer to what I can get you to what we have been building. So for instance, we have like small teams working on the invoice accrual and some teams working on the metadata and rules engine and administration. So likewise, we have like small feature teams who are working on that. So now the new guys comes into the team. So they are like mobile savvy guys. So they know in and out about how the cross-platform mobile apps works. So if it is Coda, they know how to use it, do Coda. If it is React Native, they know how to do it in React Native. But what they don't know is that, let's say that, okay, I want a new feature in SAP World. So the problem that we have is that, so for when we are prioritizing all these features, let's say the administration, we need to sort of like, the product owners comes and say, look here, we need to have invitations because that's going to increase the onboarding process engagement like 80%. And someone comes and say, another guy from the university team comes and say that, okay, we need to have multiple invoices attached to one particular document. So all these features are like really high priority. But for the mobile guy, which one is the highest priority is a question, because for that guy, all two features they have to implement across all the modules. So how do they sort of like figure out, okay, what am I supposed to do now, right? So it doesn't make any sense. So because of that, we sort of like every time we are sort of like behind the schedule when it comes to releasing. So we cannot like decide, okay, can we ship it today? And then the mobile guys comes and say, okay, no, look here, I'm not ready, we cannot ship it. So then we have to postpone it, and then the backend guys comes and say, okay, we are ready, we can ship it. Web guys comes and say, okay, what the hell is going on, right? So we had to like put a lot of thought. So we had to put a lot of thought cross client side as well as the 99X side to figure out, okay, what are we going to do? We cannot do it like this way, because we are losing potential customers that we can acquire every time when we are delaying, right? And also certain kind of existing customers who are waiting to get the new features out for them to use. So what the solution was that so this is sort of like work in progress still at 99X Technology. We are the first team who are going to start out, who has started out this sort of transformation. What we thought of like doing is, we are going to teach all the platform specific guys. So from here onwards, there are no platform specific guys. So everybody who should be able to work on the web stack as well as the mobile stack. So this is a little bit different from full stack engineers. We are not going to create full stack engineers here. We are going to create product specialists, right? So in case in the future, if we move from Cordova to React Native, so the entire teams have to, we have to invest on credibility on that. So there's a cost involved. But the both companies were willing to take these risks because we want to ship faster. So now how we do is that we have, so we kind of like shuffled all these guys around the teams. So now we have small teams like 2 to 3 guys working on each and every module. So whenever there's a high priority feature is there for each and every module, that team can take care across all the platforms available. So now, when we started doing this way, we came across so many other issues right now, because right now, the way that we used to ship web is no longer the way that we are shipping right now. Because right now, so this particular team, it depends on what platform they are going to program first. So for instance, let's say that, okay, some particular features comes from mobile first, some particular features come from web first, right? So now, how do you sort of like, do the release engineering to support all these things? Because you have to do the backend anyway, right? So once you do the backend, it's going to crash the existing features. Or if you start shipping the mobile feature, it's going to crash the web sometimes. So we need to sort of like really be careful when we are shipping all these features. So one thing that we did in the branching strategy that we have been following. So we've been following Git flows. So initially we were using VSTS on Visual Studio because we were like Microsoft savvy guys. So we are coming from VSTS background. So when we moved to Git, we sort of like, it was quite new for us. So we followed the very basic guideline, which is called Git flows. We ended up integrating a lot of branches here and there, pushing PRs, getting them reviewed, merging conflicts and all sort of stuff. So it's sort of like a nightmare when it comes to releasing. Because we also have to make sure that once you merge all these things, you have to do a smoke test and see whether it breaks the existing features. If it is breaking, then we have to sort of like, again, do a hot fix, merge it back, do the testing again. So what we thought of doing it, like, let's simplify this thing. So we adopted this sort of like very simple flow of branching strategy that supports releases. I think this is it's a similar branching strategy that has been followed by Facebook and Gmail, Visual Studio Code. Most of these things we adopted from Visual Studio Code team. So now what we do is basically, so initially we had this master branch, which is represented by which represents the current production version. And then we have the dev branch, and then on top of that, we branch out to particular features and bug fixes. So when we are doing a release, we just branch out from the dev, do the release. So if there are hotfix on the production, we sort of like branch out from the master, and then we push all these changes to all the other sub branches that has been formed. So we don't want to do that anymore. So what we decided was that, okay, all the developers, they'll do it on master branch, right? So that's a risk. So we were willing to take that risk. So everybody works on the master branch. So whatever the feature that they do it on their private branches, and then they push it to master branch. So now, at any particular given time, we could just cut it from master branch and do a release. So the problem is that, okay, what if there are certain kind of features that are not ready to go to the production environment? What are we going to do about that? So are we going to just cherry pick whatever the commits to the release branch, or how are we going to do that? So what we said was that, okay, fuck that. We are not going to do any of that. We are just going to cut it from master branch. We are going to do a release testing, and then we are going to push it to production. So in order to do that, we need to have some sort of practices in our production environment. Something like what we call dark launching, feature toggling, stuff like that. So, so we had to sort of like implemented these features as high priority features across all the engineers. So there are a few practices that engineers has to adapt when they are like coding. I'll show you some of the things that we have done. So now, having said that, now we have the flexibility of having a date-based releases. How we do that is basically, so initially we have been like, skipping schedules a lot. So sometimes we skip for like quarters, sometimes for like years, delaying releases. So this is not healthy at all. So we decided, okay, let's do monthly releases. No matter what, the release will go on in this particular day. So now if an engineers want to ship their feature, so they know exactly when the release is going on. So this is just like a release train, right? So they have to sort of like, prepare themselves if they want to get into the train. So what we do now is, like, especially when it comes to mobile, so this is very important because once we put the mobile app to production, that's it. We don't have any control over that. We cannot recall it, we cannot like replace it if if it is crashing or anything happens. So it's sort of like a huge risk for us. But we had to do this. So one thing that is different from web to mobile is that in web we have like production, staging, test, QA, and then there's dev, and then there's local environment. So you have like a lot of environments there. You could, promote your features from environment to environment without harming anything, any features or anything like that. So in mobile you cannot do it because you don't have staging environments, you don't have QA environments, stuff like that, because it's just in mobile. So what we do here is that now, so every month, by end of the month, we cut the master branch. We create a release branch. So in this release branch will stay for like 1 month. So during this 1 month, I feel it's a little bit faster compared to, it's very slow compared to web, but when it comes to mobile, it's really fast. So it's all right for us. So this is fast enough for us when it comes to mobile. So what we do is, we create the release branch. So within first 2 weeks, we are going to stabilize this release, right? So this particular release branch have only the release engineers have access. So how are we going to give this to? How are we going to stabilize this with the QA and the stakeholders? So this is where we do dog fooding. So dog fooding concept has been there in Gmail as well as all these big players. They test it out with their own staff and then they just enable it to the whole company and then they do a slow rollout. So we want to try out all these things with the mobile version. So what we do now is that we, within first 2 weeks, we put it to test flight. And on Google, they have a really good beta program, alpha and beta program, so we put it to beta programs. So who has access to test flight and beta programs is our QA guys and the stakeholders in Computer. So they get to access these things as beta testers. So they use it day to day. So the QA guys will start smoke testing and journey map testing, right? And how they extract these journey maps is basically by tapping into Google Analytics and data center. So they know how people have been using the app. So they try to mimic these user base. So sometimes it helps us automate certain kind of things in mobile because it takes time. So during this period, no features are welcome. So we are not going to, merge, pull any sort of like features during this period. So once we cut the release branch, that's it. Only bug fixes are welcome. So bug fixes, we just cherry pick these bug fixes. We just decide what features that we want to ship, and then we merge it to release branch. So we continue doing that. One cool thing that we found out when it comes to cross-platform is code push. So we don't have to sort of like, every time when we want to ship something to production, we don't have to go through all these approval processes in App Store. So that kills a lot of time. So what we do is we adopted code push. So we do two releases, two kinds of releases. One is a very soft release using code push. So this is just the component, web components that is on there. So when we cut the release branch, we go through the changes and we decide whether we want to do a binary build or not. So if there's a binary release required, we do the binary release and push it to beta and test flight. So if we don't have binary releases, we just push the code, we push it using code push. So that goes to the beta environments. So all the stakeholders and the QA guys will get instant access to the changes that we have done. So after like 2 weeks, we stop doing any changes or bug fixes. We just do a code freeze, let it stay there for like another 2 weeks, and then we promote it to production. Right? So there's a slight process involved in this mechanism. Right? One is, so we have like 3 types of releases here. Some of these are like manually done, some of these things have been automated. So what we do here first is we push we do the code push release, because that has to go anyway. If you don't do it first, what happens is that when you push the binary release, it gets updated with the one that is there on the code push. So it thinks that, okay, the code push version that is not updated, then it starts pulling the previous version. So that's going to crash there. So we have to do the code push release first, and it's out there. And then what we do is we do the binary release, right? And then we do the backend release. So backend release anyway is like it goes every other day, most of the time. So this happens, the rest of the 2 happens like once every month. So how do we sort of like, make sure there's backward compatibility? How do we make sure that there's features, the new features that we are pushing is slow rollout to end users? So that's where the feature toggling and dark launching comes in. So what we do second is, if there is a binary release, we push it to App Store review, right? So this is on Apple only, because in Google, they really don't care. You just push it to Google, in like 1 hour, it's available for all the customers. But in App Store, it doesn't happen like that. So you have to go through the approval release. One problem that we have is we don't want, during these processes, we don't want to pollute our production data. We want to keep it clean. So App Store guys, when they are sort of like reviewing the mobile apps, we want them to point to the beta environment, not the production environment. We want to keep it clean. So there are a few tricks that we do. I'll show you how we do that. So once we get the green light from App Store, now we put both Android as well as Google, Apple versions to App Store. Make it available for everybody. So why we do it like that is that we don't want to push the Google first, because if you push the Google first, then we have to push the rest of the code push as well as the backend and also to the production. So that's gonna, create a lot of chaos. So we want to push both versions or both platforms together onto the production. We don't want to be racist in that sense. So once we do that, so we have the code push, the app as well as the backend in the latest version. The problem with mobile is that you all know that not everybody would install the app when you release the App Store. Right? Some people, I have like around 15 updates in my Android, haven't updated. So likewise, there are so many people who doesn't update it every time when it is available. So because of that, there can be like multiple versions of our app in the production, which doesn't support the backend code, which doesn't support the code push versions, etc. So this is going to break our existing features. So what we do is that the latest version will always point to the latest backend version. So we have like two versions. One is a stable version, the other one is the latest version. So the stable version, what we do is, once we release the feature to the production environment, we take all the people who have not updated the app to the latest version. We send an email saying that, okay, there's a new version available in the App Store. Please go and update it. These are the new cool features that are available. The version that you are using will be deprecated in a couple of weeks. So once we do that, so we are sort of like, safe to kind of disregard the old version. So we encourage our users to keep up to date with our versions. Once we do that, we swap the backend to the latest to stable, and we make the latest as the stable and stable as the latest. So when we do the next release in next month, that will get updated, right? So what techniques that we use? So here we are going to wrap up this session. So I'll share some of the techniques, technical points that we do here. First thing is that how do you make sure the stakeholders in Norway should be able to give us feedback about the bugs and the features. So what we have implemented here is that this feature is available for all the mobile apps that we do in 99x customers. So we give this feature as a free feature for our customers. So whether it's native, whether it's cross-platform, it doesn't matter. So we have we have a feature where if the stakeholders or the QA testers, if they found a bug, they just shake it, and we capture the screenshot, the current state of the app, what were the exceptions, what were the state data, everything. We bundle it, encrypt, bundle it, and then we create an email. So that email gets sent to the bug tracking tool. So that gets recorded automatically. So in that way, stakeholders also can report whatever the features that are there. So this is very important because this is in mobile. If if a stakeholder or QA person comes and say, okay, look here in your beta version, there's this, it gets crashed every time when I do something like this. And we cannot see it sometimes if it is in Norway customers. We cannot see their device. So we need to know what exactly going on. So we sort of like bundle all these features and send it to bug tracking tool, then it gets recorded. So as a cool feature, so we found that it's a really cool feature, so we enabled it in customers as well, end users as well. So in that way, we could get all the feedback from end users directly to us. So that gets copied to our stakeholders as well, but it directly comes to our bug tracking tool. From there, we just prioritize it and go through whether we want to have it in our next features. So how do we do this? So we have something called Eureka service. Eureka service is something like a server-side discovery, a combination of server-side discovery as well as the client-side discovery combination. So what happens there is that, you know, if the app is in dev state or the debug state, it connects to the local Eureka service and asks where the backend is. What is my backend? So then the Eureka service just sends the default configurations, and then app starts connecting to that particular backend service. So when we are doing the release, we don't have like all these environments. One thing that we agreed that, okay, let's get rid of all these environments. Let's have all the end users who are using our app, let's treat them as testers. So anybody who uses our app is a tester, right? But we want to have separate sort of like, you know, environments and instances connected in order to keep the production data clean, you know, so that we could identify the telemetry properly. So what happens here is that, so the beta or the latest versions, it connects to the production Eureka service. So that Eureka service asks for so many details at the first call. It asks for the app version, it asks for the OS, it asks for the what sort of device that you have, what sort of platform that you are in, or who's the user that you have already logged in. So all this information is being sent to the Eureka service. So from Eureka service, what it does, basically, based on these criteria, it picks the configuration that is relevant for this particular user and sends it back to the app. So now, app really doesn't care where the backend is. App really doesn't know whether it's in the beta, whether it's in the App Store review, or whether it's in production. Whatever the JSON data that it gets, it's just uses to function, right? So in that way, we could manipulate the beta, the latest as well. So in this way, we sort of like, this is what we call feature toggling with the Eureka service. So that logic, the Eureka service logic, this is something, this is the very close version of that we have written that I can show you guys. So this is not the actual code. So this is something pretty much similar to what we have. So, so we have sort of like a default JSON file which contains all the attributes that has to be used in the app. So it has the endpoints, it has the features, it has certain kind of customization attributes, etc., etc. Right? So when you want to override these features, we just create a new feature according to the criteria, and then we put that JSON file there. So we have like plenty of JSON files. So what this Eureka service does basically accepts all the information. Based on this information, it loads the default JSON file, overrides all the attributes that matches these particular criteria, right? And then it just merges everything, sends to the client, right? So we end up a JSON file something similar to this. So here we have the endpoints, we have the telemetry related attributes, we have the notification related attributes, and so many other customization attributes. Right. So if I want to sort of like point the beta version into beta backend environment, I just need to create a JSON file, put this IP address, mention what JSON in JSON file, we just rename it according to the matching criteria. So we have the Android version or OS version, and then we have the client, and then the user. So likewise, the name consists of all these things. So when you obtain all these things, you just do a pattern matching and see extract all these JSON files. So I just rename that JSON file, put whatever the attributes that I want to enable or disable, and just put it there. So when the app loads, it just gets this JSON file and start using it. So so the last point is that, so how does engineers sort of like handle these kind of things? So the only discipline that we ask from our developers is that make sure every feature that you start using, start coding, the very first line that you have to do is check the flag. So if the flag is available, you do whatever you want, right? And if the flag is not available, you just either ignore or you come up with a failover mechanism. So in the back end also you have to do the same thing. In the front end also you have to do the same thing. So the back end code is sort of like a C# code. So here we inject the Eureka service to the back end code. So from there you can simply query whatever we call it gatekeepers, the flags, and then if you can do this, if you have the flag, then you sort of like perform whatever the operation that you want to do. And so here you have like 2 flags here, which is coming from here. So we have like self-destruct, can delegate rights, can leave, sort of like all these kind of attributes. So here we use that in order to perform this. So on the client side, so this is a Cordova app. So we use Ionic with Cordova. So here also we use the same thing, because now we can do this, because now when the app is like a cold start or bomb start, it doesn't matter. It has all the attributes that it can function. So here we have the options. So we just check whether I can do this. If I can do this, okay, here's another flag that requires for this particular operation. So likewise, we just check it then and there. So in this way, what we do is, by default, it is available for developers. So when you are pushing it, even by mistake, if a feature got to production, it is not available for anybody until you go and change or create the JSON file there. So that's how we usually do it. So if you have any questions related to this, feel free to ask. I'll be here throughout the day also. Yeah. Do we have time for Q&A?
Question, yeah.
Yeah.
The bug reporting tool that you use for shaking the phone,
Yeah.
is that something you made yourself, or?
Yeah, so for cross-platform apps, we use several plugins there. We have the Shake Coder plugin available, and then there's Capture Screen plugin, and there's Email plugin. So we have to use several plugins in order to make it work. And there are some more plugins that we have to use in order to extract the details of the devices and platforms and things like that. So there's device plugin that you can use in Cordova. I'm pretty sure in React Native you have the same sort of links that you can tap in to get all these things. So that logic, we are planning to make it open source, so that because we give it for the rest of the customers also free. It's something that we think that is kind of cool and very useful. So we are making it available on open source. Just look at on either 99x GitHub or Compiler GitHub. So we have to see which one that we want to put into. So for native, of course, we have native Android version as well as Java version as well as Objective-C version. So we thought like still wondering whether we want to migrate the Java into Kotlin and Objective-C into Swift. So there's a huge debate going on with developers regarding that. Yeah.
How does feature discovery work when I'm developing on my laptop? So during active development, how do you get the right backend?
Yeah, so it's a combination of server-side discovery as well as client-side discovery. So what happens is that on the mobile, we have a manifest JSON file, which has certain other attributes, like, whether you're on debug mode, whether you're on release mode, if you're on debug mode, what are the configurations for the Eureka service? If you're on release mode, what are the configurations for Eureka service? So so when we are in the dev environment, we have a set of all these things set up in my local machine. So I just tell the manifest JSON that I'm debugging my application. So I just, when I'm running in simulator or whether I'm running, plugging it into my device.
So a short follow-up question, just practically there. Do developers risk checking in a manifest file that's saying that they're in development mode, but they should have not done so?
No, it's part of Git ignore, so it will never get pushed. So when every time when I want to sort of like when I set up a fresh dev environment, I sort of ask somebody to give me a manifest file. Too lazy to type all the configurations there. So it's part of Git ignore.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any more questions? Right. Okay. Thanks for coming, guys.